How the Communist Manifesto Came True in 2025, a modern analysis of Marx and Engels' revolutionary vision. Written by Liquid Ocelot, Chapter 1. Introduction. From 1848 to 2025, has Marx's vision become reality? 1.1. The historical impact of the Manifesto. When Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels wrote the Communist Manifesto in 1848, the world was dominated by industrial capitalism. Workers labored under brutal conditions in factories while a small class of wealthy capitalists controlled production and wealth. The manifesto called for the overthrow of the capitalist class by the proletariat working class and outlined a vision for a society where wealth and power were shared collectively. Though the ideas in the Communist Manifesto inspired revolutions from the Soviet Union to the Maoist China, true global communism never fully materialized. Instead, capitalism adopted, integrating some socialist policies like welfare programs and labor protections while maintaining private ownership and markets. But in 2025, the world has changed dramatically. Has Marx's vision finally come true? 1.2. How communism has evolved over time. Marx and Engels imagined a world where private property was abolished, wealth and resources were controlled by the state or the people. The class struggle ended. There would be no rich or poor, only collective prosperity. Work was for the common good, not for government centralized control over industries and planning. While traditional communism largely collapsed after the fall of the Soviet Union, new forms of economic control, automation, and government intervention have reshaped the modern world. Many aspects of the Communist Manifesto have re-emerged not as revolutions but as gradual changes driven by technology, social movements, and economic necessity. 1.3. The purpose of this book. This book will examine how the principles outlined in the Communist Manifesto have manifested in modern society, sometimes intentionally, sometimes as a result of unintended consequences. It will explore how governments and corporations have taken control of wealth and production, the decline of private ownership and rise of centralized planning, the growing power of global labor movements and social programs, how surveillance, AI, and technology have reshaped power structures, whether modern socialism has created true equality or a new ruling class. Marx and Engels called for a world where workers held power, but in 2025 the key question is, do the workers truly rule, or has control simply shifted to a different elite? Chapter number 2. The end of private property. Have how governments and corporations took control. 2.1. Marx called for the abolition of private property. One of the most radical ideas in the Communist Manifesto is the abolition of private property. Marx and Engels argued that private ownership of land, businesses, and capital allowed the to exploit the proletariat workers. Instead, they proposed that all property should be owned collectively or controlled by the state to ensure fairness and equality. For over a century, private property remained a cornerstone of capitalism. However, in 2025, we see the gradual disappearance of true private ownership, not through revolutions but through a mix of government policies, corporate monopolization, and technological shifts. 2.2. How private property has declined in 2025. Today, fewer people own homes, businesses, or even digital assets than ever before. The idea of owning something has shifted to a rental and subscription-based economy where people pay for access rather than possession. Number one, the housing crisis and the rise of government controlled living. Decline in home ownership. In many countries, rising real estate prices have made home ownership impossible for younger generations. Instead, governments and large corporations own most of the housing, turning people into long term renters. Universal housing program. Some nations have introduced state managed housing where residents receive apartments based on need rather than ownership. This echoes Marx's vision of land redistribution, though some critics argue it simply shifts control from individuals to bureaucracies. Number two, the end of personal vehicle ownership. Ride sharing and government managed transport. With the rise of AI driven ride sharing services, electric vehicle bans, and high fuel costs, personal car ownership has declined dramatically. Many cities have replaced private cars with government subsidized transportation networks, reducing individual control over mobility. Mobility as a service. Instead of owning a car, people now subscribe to transportation services, reinforcing the shift from ownership to dependency on centralized providers. Number three, digital property no longer belongs to individuals. Streaming and subscription models. People no longer own movies, books, or music. Instead, they pay for temporary access through digital platforms like Netflix, Spotify, and Kindle. Cloud computing and remote work. Companies no longer provide personal computers. Instead, people access company-owned cloud systems. Crypto versus state-controlled digital currencies. While cryptocurrencies promise decentralized ownership, many governments have introduced state-controlled digital currencies, limiting financial privacy and independence. 2.3 Corporate power, the new owners of everything. Ironically, while the Communist Manifesto argued for workers' control of production, today's reality is that corporations, not workers, own and control most industries. Some key examples include tech giants owning digital infrastructure. Amazon, Google, and Microsoft control vast portions of the internet, deciding who can access or monetize content. Agricultural and food monopolies. A handful of multinational corporations now own most of the world's food supply, patents on seeds, and even lab-grown meat production. The gig economy and worker dependency. Instead of traditional employment, many workers now rely on corporate-controlled gig platforms, Uber, DoorDash, Fiverr, where they do not own their work but depend on the platform's policies. While Marx envisioned a world where the government centralized property for the people, the reality in 2025 is that corporations and governments together have replaced private ownership with managed access and control. 2.4 The future. Will private property be completely abolished? The trend is clear. Individual ownership is fading. But is this true communism or simply a new form of centralized control? Marx was correct in predicting that capitalism would concentrate wealth and ownership into fewer hands. The idea of private property is fading, with most assets now controlled by governments or corporations. However, workers do not own the means of production. Corporate elites and governments do. As we move toward a world where access replaces ownership, the question remains: has capitalism evolved into a form of corporate socialism, or are we inching towards true communism? Chapter number 3: The death of the bourgeoisie, the fall of the traditional capitalist class. 3.1 Marx's prediction: the end of the bourgeoisie. In the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels predicted that capitalism would eventually destroy itself, leading to the fall of the capitalist class and the rise of the proletariat, the working class. They argued that economic crisis, wealth concentration, and worker uprisings would eliminate the capitalist ruling class, paving the way for a communist society. In 2025, the traditional bourgeois, the independent business owners, wealthy elites, and corporate leaders have largely been replaced by a new form of power. While billionaires and corporations still exist, their influence is no longer based purely on capitalism, but on a combination of government intervention, centralized planning, and digital control. Has the bourgeois truly fallen, or has it simply evolved into a new ruling class? 3.2 The decline of small businesses and entrepreneurs. Marx predicted that small business owners, the petty bourgeois, would be squeezed out by the unstoppable expansion of monopolies and large industries. In 2025, this has already happened. Corporate takeover of local businesses, small businesses have struggled to compete with Amazon, Walmart, and Alibaba, which dominate global supply chains. The death of the independent entrepreneur. Large platforms like Etsy, Uber, and Fiverr have created an illusion of independence while keeping workers under the control of corporate algorithms. Regulations that favor big businesses. Governments often impose strict laws that small businesses can't afford to follow, while large corporations thrive by influencing policy. While capitalism once thrived on independent businesses and competition, today's economy is defined by corporate monopolies and government managed industries, making it nearly impossible for small business owners to survive. 3.3 Wealth redistribution and the taxation of the super rich. Another key prediction in the Communist Manifesto was that wealth would be taken from the bourgeois and redistributed to the workers. While full expropriation has not happened, many governments have taken significant steps towards heavily taxing the wealthy. Ultra wealth taxes. Many countries have introduced high tax rates on billionaires, forcing them to give up large portion of their income. Corporate profit redistribution. Some governments have passed laws that force corporations to share profits with workers or fund public welfare programs. Limit on inheritance. New regulations prevent the transfer of large fortunes, ensuring that wealth is not concentrated in the hands of a few families. While this has led to a reduction in extreme wealth inequality, it has not necessarily empowered the working class. Instead, much of this wealth has shifted to government control, creating a new form of centralized economic power. 3.4 The rise of state-backed corporate elites. While the traditional bourgeois may be fading, a new ruling class has emerged, one that combines corporate influence with government power. In 2025, some of the most powerful individuals are not private capitalists, but state-backed corporate executives and technocrats who control vast digital and economic networks. Examples include tech CEOs who align with governments to regulate and manage digital economies, central bankers and policymakers who dictate financial policies that replicate free market competition with managed economies, AI-driven economies, where algorithms, not private business owners, determine success. This new elite does not resemble the factory-owning bourgeois of Marx's time. Instead, it is a technocratic class that operates through government-backed digital control. 3.5 The bourgeois truly have been defeated. Marx was correct that small business owners and traditional capitalists would decline. Extreme wealth accumulation has been curbed through taxation and government policies. However, a new ruling class has emerged, one that fuses corporate government and technological power. Instead of a world where workers own the means of production, we now live in a world where corporate state partnerships control wealth, industry, and digital infrastructure. Has this truly achieved Marx's vision of communism, or has it simply replaced one ruling class with another? The struggle is no longer between capitalists and workers, but between centralized control and individual autonomy. Chapter number 4. Workers of the World Unite, the rise of the global labor movement. 4.1 Marx's vision of workers' solidarity. In the Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels famously called on workers to unite against capitalist oppression. They believed that through solidarity and revolution, the proletariat working class could capitalist elite and establish a society where workers and labor movements have reshaped the global economy, but not always in the way Marx revolutions. The struggle has taken the form of mass unionization, corporate pressure campaigns, and government intervention in labor rights. The key question is, have workers truly gained control, or have they simply traded one form of dependence for another? 4.2, the new labor movement, digital and global. While traditional factory strikes and industrial action still occur, the labor movement in 2025 has evolved in several ways. Number one, mass unionization and worker cooperatives. Tech and gig workers have unionized. Employees at companies like Amazon, Tesla, and Google have successfully formed unions, forcing corporations to provide better wages, benefits, and job security. Gig workers demand rights. Uber drivers, DoorDash, couriers, and freelancers have pressurized governments to classify them as employees rather than independent contractors, granting them labor protections. Worker-owned businesses are rising. Corporates where workers share profit and decision-making power have become a growing alternative to traditional corporations. Number two, universal basic income and government support. Many nations have implemented UBI programs, providing a guaranteed income for all citizens, reducing dependency on low-wage jobs. Governments have expanded public services like healthcare, housing, and education, reducing the need for employment-based benefits. Automation has forced governments to introduce job replacement programs, ensuring displaced workers still receive an income. Number three, AI and automation, the new class struggle. Machines have replaced millions of jobs, creating a divide between those who can control AI and those who are left unemployed. New digital labor movements have formed, demanding that the benefits of automation be shared with the workers rather than just traditional corporations. Some governments have responded by nationalizing AI-driven industries, ensuring that profits from automation are distributed to the public. While these developments suggest progress towards worker empowerment, they also raise new concerns. Are workers getting too independent, or are they simply becoming more reliant on government programs and corporate structures? 4.3, the shift from capitalist exploitation to state dependency. Marx envisioned a world where workers lose control of the economy. However, in 2025, rather than controlling production, many workers now rely on government subsidies and corporate policies for their survival. This raises an important question. Workers no longer suffer from extreme exploitation like in the 19th century. Governments and unions have secured better wages, healthcare, and financial stability. However, many workers are now economically dependent on centralized systems rather than self-sufficient. The poor may have gained better conditions, but they have not only gained control. Instead, corporations, governments, and AI systems now dictate the structure of work. Energy and utilities. Many countries have taken control of power grids, water supplies, and renewable energy production, arguing that these resources are too essential to be left in private hands. Healthcare. Universal healthcare has become widespread, with governments fully owning and operating hospitals, pharmaceutical production, and medical research. Food and agriculture. Some nations have implemented state-managed farming programs distributing food through ration systems or government stores. Number 2, AI-driven central planning. Artificial intelligence now plays a major role in economic planning, optimizing resource distribution and minimizing waste. Governments use AI to track production needs, determining how many goods and services should be created, reducing inefficiencies. Digital rationing systems ensure equal distribution of essentials, replacing the traditional supply and demand markets. Number 3, the death of free markets. Many private businesses have been absorbed by government programs, ensuring that profits are redirected toward public welfare rather than public wealth. Cryptocurrencies have been replaced with state-backed digital currencies, allowing governments to control financial transactions. Global trade is now regulated through centralized agreements, preventing corporations from exploiting workers and resources. While these shifts have reduced inequality and provided stability, they also raise concerns about overreach, inefficiency, and the loss of individual economic freedom. 5.3 The role of the government in everyday life. As the state expands its control over industries, it also increases its influence over personal lives. Some major developments include universal basic income (UBI). Many nations provide a guaranteed income to all citizens, reducing financial instability but also increasing dependence on the government. Government housing programs. Instead of home ownership, many people now live in state-managed housing assigned based on need. AI-managed work assignments. Some governments have implemented job matching systems where AI assigns work based on individual skills and economic demand. While these programs aim to ensure fairness and stability, they also raise a key question. Do people still have true economic freedom, or is their entire financial existence managed by the state? 5.4 The new power structure, bureaucracy over business. Under capitalism, the wealthy elite controlled production. Under centralized planning, bureaucrats, policymakers, and AI systems now hold economic power. This shift has created a new ruling class of government officials, economists, and technocrats who decide who gets what resources, what industries are prioritized, how much freedom individuals have in choosing their economic roles. Marx was correct that capitalism would lead to increased government control over industry. Central planning has eliminated some inefficiencies of capitalism. However, the working class does not fully control production, the government does. Instead of overpowering the proletariat, modern centralized planning has created a new managerial class that directs the economy from above. 5.5 Has centralized planning achieved communism? Marx envisioned a world where the workers control production democratically. Instead, 2025 has given us a high-tech government-managed economy where AI bureaucrats and digital planning systems determine economic outcomes. Has this eliminated economic inequality partially? Has this given true control to the workers? No. Control has simply shifted to a different elite. As society continues down this path, the real question becomes, will centralized planning evoke into true worker-led governance, or will it remain another form of economic control? Chapter number 6, the abolition of the family. Changing social structure. 6.1 Marx vision, the end of the traditional family. In the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels argued that the traditional family structure was a tool of capitalism, designed to pass down wealth and reinforce class divisions. They believed that under communism, child rearing would become a collective responsibility rather than a private one. Women would be freed from domestic labor, as the household would no longer be an economic unit. Traditional traditional marriage would fade, replaced by more fluid social relationships. While this idea was radical in the 19th century, many elements of it have materialized in 2025 not through outright government decrees but through cultural shifts, economic necessity, and state-driven policies. 6.2 The decline of the nuclear family. Over the past few decades, the traditional nuclear family model, a father, mother, and children living together in a single household, has declined significantly. This has been driven by number one, economic pressures on family structures. Rising costs of living have made it difficult for single-income households to survive. Many people now delay or avoid marriage and children due to financial instability. The gig economy and unstable job markets make long-term relationships harder to maintain. Number two, government involvement in child rearing. Many countries provide free childcare and early education programs, reducing parents' role in raising children. Some nations have state-sponsored communal living arrangements where child rearing is shared across multiple families. AI-driven education systems have replaced traditional schooling, further shifting the responsibility of parenting to the state. Number three, the rise of alternative family models. Polyamorous and non-traditional relationships have become more normalized, reflecting a shift away from state-sanctioned monogamous marriage. Many people now live in communal housing arrangements rather than traditional family homes. The legal system has adapted to allow for multiple parent households where more than two adults have legal rights over a child. These changes align partially with Marx's idea that the family would dissolve under communism, but they have occurred for economic and technological reasons rather than ideological revolution. 6.3 The role of the state in personal relationships. As the family unit declines, the government and corporate entities have taken on many of the roles traditionally held by families. Welfare programs replace financial dependency on family members. AI-driven matchmaking services shape relationships more than traditional courtship. Government-provided care for the elderly reduces the need for family-based caregiving. While these systems provide security, they also increase dependence on the state and weaken personal ties. Some critics argue that this has eroded emotional bonds, leading to increased isolation despite technological connectedness. 6.4 Has the family truly been abolished? Marx was correct that economic and social changes would weaken the nuclear family. Child rearing has become more collective, with government, schools, and AI playing larger roles. However, families have not been entirely abolished, they have simply evolved into new forms. Rather than a total abolition of the family, we see a shift where traditional roles have faded, but emotional and social bonds remain in different forms. The question is, has this led to greater inequality, or has it simply created new dependencies on the state and corporate systems? Chapter number 7, Surveillance, Control, and the New Proletariat. 7.1 Marx warning about social control. Marx and Engels believed that a proletarian revolution would overthrow the ruling class, leading to a dictatorship of the proletariat that would eventually dissolve into a classist, stateless society. However, they also warned that if the state retained too much power, it could become another oppressive force. In 2025, while the capitalist class has weakened, a new form of control has emerged, not through private wealth, but through data surveillance and digital authorizationism. Instead of the traditional bourgeois versus proletariat struggle, power now rests with those who control information and technology. 7.2 The Digital Panopticon. How surveillance has replaced traditional oppression. Orwell's 1984 described a world where the state monitored citizens through telescreens and informants. In 2025, we don't need telescreens. We have smartphones, AI, and digital tracking systems that monitor every aspect of life. Some key ways surveillance has replaced capitalist control. Number one, social credit systems and behavior monitoring. Many countries have introduced social credit systems where behavior is tracked and scored. Citizens with high scores gain privileges, better jobs, lower interest rates, while those with low scores face restrictions, travel bans, job loss. This creates economic and social pressure to conform to state-approved behaviors. Number two, AI-driven thought policing. Governments and corporations use AI to detect dissent by analyzing social media posts, messages, and online activity. Predictive policing allows authorities to punish individuals before crime occur, often targeting political dissidents. While this prevents crime, it also eliminates privacy and free thought, ensuring ideological conformity. Number three, biometric and facial recognition systems. In many major cities, cameras track every citizen's movements using AI-powered facial recognition. Payment systems are now linked to biometric data, eliminating cash transactions and ensuring all financial activity is monitored. Governments argue this increased security, but critics warn it has eliminated personal anonymity. 7.3, the role of AI in workforce control. The modern proletariat no longer consists of family workers, it consists of gig workers, digital laborers, and AI-managed employees. The new ruling class is not a group of capitalist business owners, but those who control the algorithms that manage economic activity. AI determines hiring and firing decisions, removing human oversight from employment. Digital platforms like Amazon, Uber, and corporate AI systems track worker efficiency, forcing employees into constant productivity competitions. Many workers are kept in a state of precarity, relying on AI-driven gig platforms for temporary jobs. While Marx envisioned a world where workers would own the means of production, in 2025 they are controlled by algorithms that determine their economic survival. 7.4. The surveillance replaced the bourgeois. Marx was correct that power would shift away from traditional capitalists. The state has gained enormous control over daily life, replacing the need for private business dominance. However, instead of working liberation, a new form of oppression has emerged, one based on data, AI, and digital monitoring rather than wealth alone. The new proletariat is not just exploited economically but also controlled psychologically and socially. Instead of physical chains, workers now wear digital ones, monitored, ranked, and evaluated every moment of their lives. The question remains, is this a necessary step towards equality, or has technology created an inescapable new system of control? Chapter number 8, A World Without Borders, the Decline of Nationalism and the Rise of Global Governance. 8.1, Marx's Vision of Internationalism. In the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels called for workers to unite across national boundaries, arguing that national identity was a tool used by the ruling class to divide and control the proletariat. They envisioned a future where national borders would disappear, replaced by a global system of governance. Workers across the world would share common economic and social goals. Wars between nations would end as the class struggle replaced geopolitical conflicts. In 2025, nationalism has significantly weakened and global governance has grown stronger. But has this led to true international worker solidarity, or has power simply shifted to a new elite? 8.2, The Weakening of nation states. Over the past few decades, traditional nation states have lost influence due to economic globalization, technological advancements, and political integrations. Some key developments include: number one, supranational organizations have replaced national governments. The influence of international governing bodies such as the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, and the National Monetary Fund has grown. Many economic policies are no longer decided at the national level but by global financial institutions and AI driven economic models. Countries now follow international regulations on trade, taxation, and environmental policies, limiting their ability to act independently. Number two, mass migration has created a borderless workforce. Economic and climate crises have led to mass migration, forcing nations to abandon strict border policies. Many countries now operate under open border agreements, allowing labor to flow freely across regions. Governments provide universal residency rights, reducing distinctions between citizens and non citizens. Number three, the rise of digital governance. Traditional governments are being replaced by AI managed bureaucracies where decisions are made based on data driven analysis rather than political debate. Some nations have implemented citizen scoring systems that determine social and economic privileges based on behavior rather than nationality. Blockchain based governance models allow global decision making through decentralized voting systems. While these changes align with Marx's vision of a world beyond nationalism, they also concentrate power in the hands of global institutions and digital technocrats, raising concerns about who truly benefits from this system. 8.3 The end of war, but at what cost? One of Marx's most ambitious claims was that communism would eliminate war as class struggle would replace conflicts between nations. In 2025, large-scale wars have declined, but new forms of conflict have emerged. Cyber warfare instead of traditional military battles, nations and corporations engage in AI-driven cyber conflicts, manipulating global financial systems, elections, and communication networks. Economic warfare. Trade restrictions, sanctions, and financial manipulation have replaced traditional military invasions. Ideological wars. Governments and corporations control digital narratives using AI-generated propaganda to influence populations across borders. While nation states no longer fight in conventional wars, struggles for power have simply moved into the digital and economic realms. 8.4 Has globalization achieved Marx's dream? Marx was correct that nationalism would decline and borders would become less relevant. Workers now move freely and global governance is stronger than ever. However, instead of worker control, a new elite manages the global system. AI-driven bureaucracies, financial institutions, and corporate state partnerships. Rather than a world of proletarian unity, we now have a system where power is concentrated in global organizations and AI-driven governance models. Digital surveillance replaces military control, ensuring ideological conformity. Workers still lack direct power as decisions are made by technocrats and digital systems rather than democratic labor councils. The question remains: has internationalism truly liberated workers, or has it simply created a new form of centralized control? Chapter number 9: The dictatorship of the proletariat, who really holds power in 2025. 9.1 Marx's vision of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Marx and Engels believed that after the fall of capitalism, the working class would establish a temporary dictatorships of the proletariat, a period in which the workers would seize control of the economy and state. This phase was meant to abolish private property and redistribute wealth, dismantle capitalist structures, and eliminate class hierarchies, eventually dissolving into a classless, stateless society where workers collectively govern themselves. However, history has shown that worker-led revolutions often result in new forms of centralized control rather than true worker governance. In 2025, we must ask, does the proletariat actually rule, or has power shifted to a new elite? 9.2 Who holds power in 2025? Marx predicted that workers would control production and decision making, but in reality, power has been concentrated in a new class of political, technological, and bureaucratic elites. Number one, the technocrat ruling class. Instead of factory owners and private capitalists, a new elite consists of AI driven bureaucracies that manage economies and social structures, government technocrats who regulate industries and allocate resources, corporate state partnerships where multinational companies align with governments to implement policies. These groups have replaced the traditional bourgeois but still dictate how resources are distributed, who gets what, and how society functions. Number two, the automation divide. Who controls AI? Automation has eliminated millions of jobs, but workers do not own the AI systems that replaced them. Instead, AI is controlled by government planning departments and corporate technocrats. Workers must rely on state-provided income, universal basic income rather than wages. Labor unions have less power as automated industries no longer require large workforces. Rather than achieving worker ownership of production, AI managed economies have created new forms of dependency, with technocrats and AI systems deciding the fate of workers. Number three, the illusion of worker control. While workers are given some democratic participation through digital voting and councils, major decisions are still made by algorithmic governance where AI determines economic policies, global committees of experts who override popular opinion when necessary, state-controlled enterprises where workers participate but not truly control decision making. This raises the question, is this truly worker rule or just a new version of top-down governance? 9.3, has the dictatorship of the proletariat been achieved? Marx was correct that capitalism would collapse and a new economic system would emerge. Governments now play a greater role in wealth distribution and economic planning. However, instead of worker control, power has been concentrated in AI-driven bureaucracies and global governance systems. While private capitalist rule has ended, workers do not directly control production. They are managed by AI-driven systems and political planners. The dream of a stateless, classless society has not materialized. Instead, a new ruling class has taken shape, blending government power with digital control. The key question remains, is this the final stage before true communism, or has society simply replaced one ruling class with another? Chapter number 10, Conclusion. The future of communism beyond 2025. 10.1, has the Communist Manifesto been fully realized? Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels wrote the Communist Manifesto as a call to arms for the proletariat to overthrow capitalism and establish a classless, stateless society where wealth and power are distributed equally. By 2025, many of their predictions have come true in unexpected ways. Private property has largely disappeared, replaced by government or corporate controlled access to resources. The traditional bourgeoisie weakened, but a new technocrat elite now holds power. Global labor movements have reshaped the economy through automation, though automation has replaced many workers. The state controls more industries, but instead of dissolving, it has become even more powerful through AI and surveillance. National borders have become less relevant, but instead of worker-led internationalism, global governance is controlled by bureaucratic and technological elites. While many economic and social structures have shifted in Marx's predicted direction, the end goal, true worker control and the dissolution of state power, has not been achieved. Instead, power has simply changed hands. 10.2, the future of communism, what comes next? As we look beyond 2025, the future of communism and economic control will be shaped by several key factors. Number one, the role of AI in governing society. Will AI-driven economies ensure fair wealth distribution, or will they become new tools of oppression. Will workers ever control AI systems, or will digital technocrats remain in charge? Number 2, the balance between individual freedom and state control. Will governments gradually reduce control and give power back to the people, or will digital governance solidify authoritarian control, making rebellion impossible? Number 3, the fate of economic equality. Will automation and government planning eliminate class struggle, or will a new elite continue to manage the economy, keeping workers in a state of dependence? The answers to these questions will determine whether 2025 is a stepping stone towards full communism or just another evolution of centralized control. 10.3 Final thoughts. Is communism the future? Marx envisioned a world where workers controlled their own destiny. In 2025, we see elements of his vision, but with unexpected challenges and contradictions. Instead of true worker control, AI, global technocrats, and bureaucracies have taken power. Instead of the state dissolving, governments have become stronger through digital surveillance and economic planning. However, extreme wealth inequality has reduced, and capitalism, as Marx knew it, has declined. The fundamental question remains: is this the end of capitalism and the beginning of true communism, or has society simply replaced one form of control with another? The future is unwritten, but one thing is certain: the struggle for power, freedom, and equality is far from over. The end.